Right. Evening, coaches. Welcome again to our fifth instalment of our little webinars we've been doing over the course of the last couple of months. I've obviously been getting good feedback from all of you, which is great. We see our new this coach that needs no real introduction. So Scotty Wisemantel is our new attack coach for the Wallabies moving forward, but has come from an extensive coaching background going back to 1999, so nearly 21 years in coaching. So someone that's coached all over the world, from France to England, set up to Japan to Samoa, and obviously within the Australian setup. So it's good to have you on, Scotty. So what we'll do is same thing applies for most of them, guys. Scotty's going to explain to you what he's going to go through. So I'm not going to unmute you when you want to ask a question. When Scotty opens it to the floor, if you want to just send me a message that you want to ask a question, I'll just say your name. You can unmute yourself, and we'll go from there. So I'll put it over to Scott. Man, after you.
All right. Thanks, Damien. Cheers. A few people I know on there. G'day, Scriv. I think Huey's there as well. So hello, boys. Look, good to have rugby back on the weekend. Just one thing that Damien and I were talking about before I hook into the structured attack is that all the talk around the breakdown, the refereeing, et cetera, you have to remember that there's a sample size of 2 games, and the pressure on those referees was enormous because the whole world was watching. The one thing that we took out of it, and Laurie was on a discussion last night with the referees, with Alain Roland and all the big dogs, Scott Young and Lyndon Bray, and it's become really evident that there's catch, pass, support. So if you're doing anything with catch, pass, you have to integrate support, because the inside gate was penalised, or the turnovers happened at least 75% of the time. So if you can coach that and get that right, it means that your turnovers or penalties at the breakdown are going to be minimal. The second thing is, out of that, is that game line's king. Now, because they're refereeing those sharp lines, those angles, those L shapes, and they're sort of saying that they need, they don't want to see your bum, basically. So you've got to come in sort of through the gate from 45 degrees or less. If you get gain line, it's easy, because it just means that your lines into the breakdown are so much easier. Conversely, from the defensive side of things, you want to catch teams above the game line so that you can get them. So they were probably the big takeaways. And Damien and I were discussing 15 minutes prior to jumping on here. All right, the way that the presentation is going to work, I pre-recorded a presentation. It's about 23 minutes. There's 4 segments. At the end of every segment, I'll pause it, and then we can have a chat. And I've got a lot of video in there, so you actually get to see real life examples. And the way that I probably want to go around it is how you train it. So the clips here, even though most are professional or test match, what I've deliberately done is gone and tried to find clips where, if you're at an amateur club, you can do it. So there's no more than 2 passes, and the devil is in the detail. And then coaching it. All right, so away we go. So just let me share my screen, and we'll get up and running. I'll get that out of the way. Okay, we're right. Just tell me if you can. Just put your thumbs up if you can hear the audio when it's about to play. So I'm about to play it now.
No, I'm not getting anything, mate.
Okay, so we're not getting any audio?
No.
Okay, no problems. All right, I'll go back and I'll just do it when I haven't pre-recorded. So okay, so that was a waste of time, wasn't it? I thought I was being clever. Okay, so the definition here for structured attack is and you could include counter attack here. I know that Dave Rennie, he's very big on putting counter-attack as a structured attack, because there will be structure to our counter. However, the traditional definition would be scrum, line-out, restarts. I'm going to focus on the first two, so scrum and line-out. And really, with your structured attack, you either want to put a hole in the team straight up, expose a weakness, or you want to gain three-phase ascendancy and accuracy. So you've got run or kick. So if I was to describe your starter plays, firstly, you want to gain momentum. Secondly, you want to dent the line. Then you want to find the space. Now, finding the space, that can mean, ball in hand, but it can also mean ball on the foot. So if I continue on here, now, the importance of it. So 60% of all tries, and this is tier 2. So what I've done is taken all the rock star teams, taken it away, because I know that I've got a diverse crowd here. Some people that are coaching kids. I was just saying to Damien before that I've been sort of down there coaching my daughter's under 13 team, and that's a challenge. And then some club guys, and then the TARS last week. So it's been an interesting mix. So 60% of all tries by the tier 2s occurred in the first three phases. So it shows that there's a need for that. However, you've got to go back to where you win the ball. So it means that your set piece, and has Murph been on at all, Damien?
Yeah, Murph was 2 weeks ago.
Outstanding. Good. Okay. Well, hopefully he got excited about the set piece and particularly the scrum. So the scrums, from a tier 2 nation point of view, they weren't great, but their line out success was worse. So the average for tier 1 was 95%. They were 78%. So you've got to get those building blocks in place before you can actually worry about your structured attack. And then what I'll do is I'll go through worst case scenario of winning the ball in those situations. So just I'm going to wait for this slide to flick over. Okay, so I think the starting point is how you win the ball. So if you line, there's either a jumping contest, and if you're lucky enough to have 3-4 jumpers, that's fantastic. So you can go with higher numbers, ties up more players in the line out, means that there's more space for the backs to attack, and away you go. If you don't, there's a couple of ways around it. One is to go less numbers, and you can go to an agility contest. But the other way is the Hurricanes did it with their first play, probably the only line out that they actually won clean, on the weekend, where they threw over the back. And I'll show you an example of that, and then the ordering of it with Fiji against Australia in the Rugby World Cup. For the scrum, you can use it as a weapon to win penalties if it's a strong scrum. And if it's not, what we had is, when I was working with Japan, we started with a very, very poor scrum, but you used your smaller players to your advantage, because we actually scrummed at a lower height than other teams. So we could lock out at a lower height where it was uncomfortable for other teams, get it in, get it out and play. And that was the scrum. The other thing is it's an opportunity to unsettle opposition. So by doing something different on one of your plays early in the game, something that's unpredictable, it throws doubt into the opposition. So I always like to go down that route where you have something where it's a wee bit different. And you would have seen that with England. We always started with a line out that was a bit different, or a scrum play. How many new plays each week? That many. All right. And the reason we had one new play each week was, firstly, to expose the opposition weaknesses. But the other thing is to keep players engaged, because we're all creatures of habit, whether you're coaching the under 8s or you're coaching professionally. You need them to stay engaged, stay interested. And for all the junior coaches out there, and I follow this mantra, because if a kid's come from school or work and they're not really into school, or they're not really into work, your first activity, the first thing that you do at training, has to be engaging. And for that reason, always play games. Like, always a game to start, and the game's fast. So they know when they get there, they've got to get their bodies right. I've never seen anyone in a game of touch footy at the start of training say, oh, hang on, we've got to warm up. I've never seen it. Okay. However, if you run a crap drill, they always go, oh, we should warm up before we go into the crap drill. So I think that's a philosophical thing, where you have to think where your players have come from the day, and then make them engaged. Okay. Okay, so here we go. First line out by Fiji in the game against Australia. So Australia, basically thought that they could outsmart, outmaneuver the Fijians. So what do the Fijians do? Here we go. Hopefully this plays. I'm getting no love here. Hang on, sorry. Sorry, I'll just, this should kick in now. All right, I'm getting no love. All right, what I'm going to do, oh, hang on, here it goes.
Yeah, it'll probably lag just a little bit, Scotty.
Yeah, okay, I've got it. So throw over the back. So you've got that now?
Yeah, it is lagging, but if you're talking through it, I'm sure it'll be fine.
No problems. So terrific starting play. So they've basically done to Australia what they didn't expect. Now, this is their second one, a front peel. Simple plays. Simple plays. Now, if you have a hooker who can't throw over the back, get your halfback to throw it. Just get him to go in there and pass it. Yeah, because that's always and here we go. Here's one where you expose the seam. So you'll notice that with Claremont, the last two, they drop off. Hold the back there. And then by doing that, you get your best runner. So say, for instance, your best runner is your fullback. Put your fullback in that position. Don't be hung up on what number is on someone's back. Okay. The next example is a scrum. So this one here is we've got the French, and the French want to they want to scrum. They want to stay in the fight in the scrum. It's early doors. So what do? You go to an edge, really simple, just a double cut, and then you kick. And now you look at the French forwards going back, and it's everything that they don't want, because what they want is combat. So if you're playing a bigger, more combative team, you actually want to make them run. It's a game of hit and run, hit and run, hit and run, early doors. So that's another strategy you can take in. Now, if your scrum's getting pumped, okay, like the team in blue here, what they will do is they'll hit up and they just come back with a simple reverse play, because the opposition forward pack have kept pushing. The tight five is disconnected from the back row. And there it is. Really simple. That's a sequence play. Really simple. Okay. All right, that one's frozen. Okay, so the bottom line is you have to ask yourself before you start, what's the skill level of your team, where you can place your players, so your strike players, and how you can use them. So if the wing is outstanding and your centres can't pass, then you have a problem. Just move your winger, okay, on certain plays. And then you can look at where the opposition are vulnerable. So that's 0.4, not 0.1. I tend to find that when we're doing analysis, we always look at the opposition first. And I know that, with the junior coaches, you don't have the luxury of a lot of those things. So it's a good methodology to work towards, where you go through those things. Okay, we're going to look at the match the hatch. So we're looking at a couple of different plays here. So this one here is a simple 7-man line out. Ball goes from 10 to 12. 12 can pass. Now he's got a blind winger on his hip. 15 bounces. Simple. So that one's a really good play in the back end of your field. So when the wingers are set sort of slightly back, and it still works if you play a 4-man press. So 10, 12, 13, open winger all flat. This one here is 2 lots of 1 passes, and it goes along the same principle of the scrum, except South Africa have a good scrum in this situation, but the front row holds the Australian front row in. Okay, so once again, there's a disconnect on the fold. So there's one pass, crash, come back, and the Australian front row has been held in. So there's a disconnect, and away they go. Simple. Okay, so when we look at the analysis, so it's what are we looking for? So if you look at the Chiefs here, and this is round one pre-COVID, in the good old days. Round one, Aaron Cruden's just come on at 10. Okay, 9 mirrors 9. So the blue 9, so the Blues, he mirrors the 9. And because he does that, it exposes the blind side. Okay, so they've now thrown doubt into the defensive system because, and ironically, later in the game, they get a scrum in nearly exactly the same spot. Now watch the 9, the Blues 9. So just see where he goes and what he does. So body language is really important. So 10, 12, 13 all have the same body language as the first starter play. 11 moves to the blind, and because 9 misses the jump, there's a void between 9, 10, and there's a line break. So when I'm analysing other teams, my starting point on starter plays is usually 9, wingers, and fullback, because they're the people you can manipulate. So here's a reverse. So 9 follows 9, reverse, and it's clunky, but it's effective, and that should go to the wing. Yeah. So that's just a really simple way that if opposition teams, if their 9 follows your 9, how to actually get around it. Okay, and on this one, it's 2 lots of 2-pass plays. So this is another sequence one. So where it goes to 10 to 12, everyone folds. You notice the blind winger, Ben Smith, hides behind the last attacker, and away you go. So forwards mirror forwards, but they don't actually see Ben Smith because he's actually tucked in behind that last player. In this situation, it's centre field scrum. It's a 4-2 split. So England, on their left, have 4 players. There's 2 on the right. One thing I don't like to do in attack is have 3-3. Always like unless I'm kicking, unless we're kicking out of the backfield. This one here is Johnny Sexton in green, in behind the scrum. He'll come over and try and mirror the English team. What happens is you can actually hold him by the halfback taking 1 step and then go to the second man. So see how much trouble they're in? So if your halfback has a strong pass, it's perfect because then it exposes the backfield. So you've manipulated the 10 there simply by, he thinks he's being smart to move, and then you go, yeah, okay, that's fine. But what we'll do is we'll just go a cut pass straight to the second guy, and the speed of the ball beats the man. Aaron Smith on your left, watch what he does to TJ Perinara. He sits him down. So this is a great play. If you're gonna have line runners in around a scrum where they play the halfback on halfback here, sit him down, inside shoulder, bang. Lots of runners. Simple footy. Done well. Done really well. Okay. Any questions with any of that stuff at the start?
I might ask you in and around. You did say earlier only one extra play
Yep.
each week.
Yep.
Was that just a conscious effort as a coaching group to make that decision, or was that just a plan through the World Cup?
No, that came from Eddie. So that came from Eddie Jones. So, and he explained it. He actually explained the why, because sometimes I'd want 2, and he'd go, well, what's the most important one? And you go, well, I'd like 2. And he goes, no, what's the most important one? So I think he explained it well in that it keeps the players engaged. The other thing is that your starter plays should have multiple options anyway, so that you can always tweak things. And that'll come later in this presentation of how you can tweak things. Yeah, so that's the theory behind it.
I think it's all a bit quiet at the moment. They'll get there. They'll warm into it eventually. So
guys,
keep
we got
trucking on.
anyone else there? Any other questions before I keep chipping away? Okay, I'm going to go 3, 2, 1, and I'm going to move on. Right, here we go. Okay, so what are we looking for? So sometimes you've got to work with worst case scenario. So in this lot of clips, I'll show you how to manipulate defence when sometimes you're not that good, to be honest. And the first one will be England against Ireland. And that one is you're winning the front ball. And then 9, Conor Murray is in the tracks. So he's in the 5-metre channel. They don't play a halfback. So it's just come on now. They don't play a halfback. So you'll notice that they've got an extra forward out there in the red scrum cap. So we wanted to win the ball at 2 here, because if you win the ball at 2, it means that the halfback, Conor Murray, is worried about a front peel. What it does, it then exposes the backfield because they're so front field heavy because they're worried about you going wide. So it's a dummy, deliver, and then kick back with Johnny May, our fastest player, chasing. And there you go. So the next line out that they play, they're worried if they go, well, do we play a halfback? Does 9 stay where he stays in the tracks there? Do you manoeuvre around? Okay, so once again, really simple way that how you overcome teams that don't play a halfback if they want that extra player in the back line, just to manoeuvre them around. The next example. Okay, I've just got a chat here. Hang on. What's your view on 2-ball distributors, Ford and Farrell? I'll get to that in a tick. Hang on. That's Chop. Get Chop. Okay, so this one here. This is a 49. So the 9's at the front for England. The first play is really narrow because what you want is the back row, the athletic ones, to keep folding. Second play, 1 pass, direct, and that's at 10. So 10 holds. Now look what you come back to. So the art of it is, on the very first breakdown, rather than having ball carrier +2, we had ball carrier +3. So you overload so that when they hop up, they can't count the numbers. They don't count the numbers. There's a mismatch. And you'll find that on this example here. And the reason I chose this one, this is Oyonnax against Bordeaux, is because it's a traditional +1 play. So it's a 6+1. So it looks like it could be mauled. They get out. Now narrow, direct. Now watch on the next, look at them overload. There's a million. Okay. The next phase, they do it really well because they go really narrow and then they come back because they've all got up and then away they go. Now that's a really good technique against teams that are very, very prescriptive and very disciplined in defence, because you know how many numbers you're going to get to fold. There's a system and you can break them down that way. And in this last example here, it's an overload again. Watch Kieran Reid at the back on this breakdown here. Sorry, the first breakdown. Yeah, wasn't required, just stood at the back. And then they create numbers just through overloading. So it's another technique that you can use on your starter plays. So now I'm just going to pause there because Marco had a question. Okay, so Marco's asked, what's your view on 2-ball distributors, so like Ford and Farrell, versus playing a 12 who has limited distribution ability? Yeah, so Eddie would chop and change depending on opposition. That's true. It depends whether you want to play subtle or sledgehammer. So there's certain games where you want to play sledgehammer and then you can bring on the 2-ball distributors, which we did against Australia in the quarterfinal. And then 40 came on and then just started to plug corners and move us around. Look, I think the way the game's going, the one thing that I'm certain of is that you need one centre at least that can get you over the game line. So you need a carrier. You have to have a carrier, whether that's 12 or 13. That's the minimum. If you have a guy who can carry and play a little bit, that's magic. So hopefully that answers that, Chop. Mate, just zip me another thing on the chat. I'm becoming very tech savvy here with these Zoom things. Okay, so training, what are we looking for? So you got to train the game. So the thing is, where are your scrums and lineouts? You map them, and a really simple way to do that is just get a piece of paper and just put dots where they are and see, are you training that? Because if you're having a lot of lineouts in the back end of your field and you're practicing these magic starter plays where you're not really going to be able to use them, well, then you're not being efficient with your time. You want clarity in your walkthroughs, and look, it's still a good method for junior coaching, club coaching, having a walkthrough and then doing it. But then you have to test in a game under fatigue and under adverse opposition if you can. So if you're the under 9s, if you can train against the under 10s and do some plays against the under 10s, that's magic, because then you're really testing it. And then I suppose if you're running any phase shapes, what phase shapes can you place in your starters? And then rather than new plays, the same play, but potentially all you do is just change the numbers. So for club coaches, so, you know, like blokes like Scriv, where teams are getting tape, you can run a 7-man play, but then the next week you might run a 6-man, but it's exactly the same thing. And then the team's been drilled that watch this 7-man play. You know, they're gonna play it. They'll play it, and then it's a 6-man, and then it throws them. So that's another technique to change it up. So I think they're things that you really have to train. The big thing is coming back to it. So rather than a really big discrete block of starter plays, and I know that you know, the traditional way was at the end, half an hour, forwards, backs, away you go. I'd be inclined to go more discrete, so where you go 10 minutes apart, come back together. So you go into whole skill, game sense, chaotic rugby, go back again, come back. So then how does it look? So what I want to show you now is clips of training versus the game, and then some phase shapes in starters. The team in white on the left is the starting team, and the reds are the non-starters. Okay, I had the back row. So if you can get the back row integrated into these starters, and I know that it's hard from a forwards coaching point of view, but they actually get to practice their defensive and support lines. So, you know, it's a really good time then to do your tight 5 on the scrum machine. Marco, you'll get excited about that. And then the back row can then go with the backs. Now, how does it look in a game? So unless it you waste time. So that's the thing. What I do is with my starters, I run an inventory. So every 4 weeks, I go through and look at what starters we've played, where we played them, and then how effective they were. So yeah, that's coach's dream when you see it during the week, and then all of a sudden you jam it out. Here we go. Here's a phase shape. So just a skinny block off a line out, run really well. And then the same thing off a scrum. Australia run the same thing. And the subtlety to it is the 10 here, Australia, he looks in just to hold them for a fraction, the 9 and 10. So he holds them, holds the inside, and then he plays to the outside. So holds the inside and then plays outside there. And then under the current laws, you know, with Marika there on the inside, I'd be really hard on him with his support lines just in case there was a tackle. So that shows you how you can then integrate from the training field to the pitch. The other thing to do is, and look, I'm just throwing this out there, is worst case scenario. I might appear to be optimistic. I'm a pessimist at heart. Always, you know, think the worst. So, you know, yellow and red card scenarios. So do you practice them at training? And then when you do, just go back to some really basic, simple calls. So you're not going to get that many of them, hopefully. So, you know, everyone knows what they can just fall into with a shape or a play. And then creating space. So we looked at, there's a couple of ways you can do it. So there's the outside shoulder of 10 and then shift the ball quickly, right? So if you cut the outside shoulder of 10, 12 has to stay. Now, it depends on your breakdown speed. You need a lightning quick ball then to be able to shift. So it's like a cut and run play. Another way to do it is wide to take the outside space, and then the second phase to stress the seam. And there'll be a clip from the Waratahs there. So I'm looking forward to all the comments there on the chat. And then the setup plays, like I've shown you. I've shown the 11 and 21 plays. Now, the subtlety to the setup plays is that you get the shoulders. So, for instance, if you want a 21, means your first phase has to be on the inside shoulder of 10, so it gets spat out to the open. Now, on this play here, one pass gets the 10, so 10's out, forward's gone. Now, look, forward didn't even look. So there was no reason he had to go the blind other than that's the system. Okay? So that's a cut and run play. Really simple to execute. Okay? And then the next one that I'll show you is the Waratahs against the Lions, where they shift it wide to space to then find the seam between the athletic players and the not so athletic players in the middle of the field. Now you'll notice the zone. The zone is around the halfway area. So to go wide, it's far easier in that part of the ground, in your own half even, because the wingers usually set back and they're not as hard because they're waiting for the kick. But there you go, they find the seam. Okay, once again, that's an example. The 11 and 21 plays, look, we've been through those. So once again, it's targeting the shoulders. That's the detail around how you want to play. So for instance, if you want to cut and run play to the open, you go the outside shoulder of the 10. If you want to play a return play, potentially you go the inside shoulder, so he gets spat to the open, and then you can come back. So I think, how are you going to ball and where are you going to win it? What's the skill level of your team? And how do you get your biggest threats in the game? So, for instance, if your best player is a number 8 and he's useless at a line-out, then you're probably going to play shorter line-outs and get him in the carrying mode. You might even be a tight end prop. You know, like there's a guy plays for La Rochelle called Antonio who's played for France. He doesn't lift. He doesn't lift. So in a 7-man line-out, when you see him in there, you go, well, that's the one pod that they're not going to throw to because he won't lift. Just doesn't do it. So they play short line-outs and they put Antonio in the back line, and he's super skillful. He's hard to tackle, and it's being effective. So design your plays around your threats and what will stress the opposition. And the last thing I'd say is train the game. So put plays under more pressure than a game if you can. So that you learn, refine, and then test. So, you know, if I'm coaching, say, I'll give you an example, a real example. The under 13 girls last week did some opposed work against the under 15 girls, and they struggled. They really struggled just from a skill point of view. So then they had to work out how they could actually get gain line and how they could progress the ball without kicking it. So kicking was the easy option. And what they worked out was pretty smart. So they go to breakdown. They had the breakdown correct, no problems. And girls being girls, they actually did everything to the letter of the law. And what they did is they just got this halfback who wasn't a halfback, was a winger, and would play halfback all the time. And she just ran as fast as she could out. And then there was one player who would go under her, one player who would go outside and hit, and she just kept doing that. And eventually they ran out of numbers, and then they just went pass. Simple. But we put it under stress in a game. If we hadn't have done that at training, there's no way they would have come up with the solution, and I would never have come up with it. So I think that's really important. Okay. Questions? Let's go around the grounds. Whew.
Should unmute myself. As I said, gents, if you've got questions, just send me a little thing in the chat, and then just unmute yourself. I might kickstart it, Scotty, and probably go back to your league days. To be honest, you obviously played rugby league for Parramatta before moving on and playing rugby union for Eastwood. But you've coached for 20 plus years. You've coached in France. You've coached in Japan. You know, you coached Samoa, set up in a World Cup, England and Australia, a few World Cups as well. Out of all of that, has your coaching process changed?
I think I'm definitely know what you want now. So as opposed to trying to cover everything, just getting to what's going to make a difference. So I think that the thing is, from a training point of view, sometimes you want to make it look really nice, and their activities, as opposed to training the game. I think the game's the greatest teacher, and that's one thing that I've learned along the way.
Yeah, nice. We had a good chat with Laurie it was a month ago, Laurie, and we spoke about it earlier around Laurie's pretty open and whatnot in and around his coaching. And I think there's a quote there with Eddie Jones, who talks about being very open as well. You've obviously coached with Eddie. Is what he is publicly? Is that open to his coaching and open to opening his books and wanting to change them so he can get better every time?
Oh, he is. He's open, all right. He'll tell you what he thinks. No, look, he is, and because his philosophy is that by sharing, you're going to get things back. But the other thing is, you have to keep challenging yourself, and you have to change. So it's always about change. So if you keep doing the same thing, look, it might work for a period of time, but teams are going to work you out. You'll get worked out, and you have to change. If you don't change now, I firmly believe that you have to have a philosophy, and Eddie's on that same route. So you have a philosophy that everyone understands. However, within that philosophy, you have subtle changes along the way.
Great. Just Abrahams has got a question. So, mate, you want to just unmute yourself? You can ask, Wade. Or not?
I'm getting there.
There he is.
Yeah, how you going, Scott? Mate, just a quick question. If you're prepared to share some of the principles that you have of attack that you keep coming back to when you're thinking about ways to break down opposition, or someone suggests new ways in which you can attack. Are there some principles that you always sort of adhere to?
Yeah, look, I reckon your broad principles have to be momentum, dent the line, find the space. And if you're making up stuff that doesn't have those principles, you're in trouble. So you look at the weekend, and despite the breakdown and everyone talking about the breakdown, and I suppose that teams don't want the ball, when they did well on starter plays on structured attack was when they had momentum. They then dented the line, or they played around the line, and then you find the space, whether that's a run or kick option. The Blues had some smart kicking options against the Hurricanes, because they knew that the back three are quite poor kickers, but they manoeuvred them around to get them into that position. So I reckon they're the basic principles that overarch everything, and then you can go into the detail afterwards.
Sam Norton-Knight, mate, you want to ask your question?
Hey, Wisey, mate, I'm going to follow on where Justin came from. Then we're coaching together at Grammar. I suppose the difficulty we're having is we perceive ourselves to have a pretty limited group in terms of size and in terms of skill level. So what Justin says, where do you, and I'm sort of going to say the same question, like where do you start with a group that's probably not, probably don't have an out-and-out ball carrier, an out-and-out guy who can shift the ball. So it can be difficult to establish momentum, probably difficult to bend the line. Where do you go when you sort of got a real bare bones group?
Hit and run. Yeah, hit and run. Hide down alleyways and whack them as they go past. So, turn into street fighters. So if they're small, they're okay. But as long as they're hardworking, Nordo. So that's what you can pride yourself on. That can be your point of difference. And that's, look, I've coached plenty of teams that have been in that sort of that ilk.
I've been to a few teams like that, Wisey.
Yeah, that's right. That's exactly right. I mean, your Japanese experience, mate. So, where you might have one or two blokes who get it. They can lead you around the field. They get it. And they might even be limited. They might not be the fastest. You know that they're not going to play anything other than club rugby, potentially. However, if you can get everyone on the same page and you can play a hit and run type game and move teams around where they can't get a piece of you. So the other thing is, from an analysis point of view, that I spoke about a general philosophy, and then with the momentum, dent the line, find the space. Now, if you haven't got that, it can be hit and run. However, I think the other thing you do is then you look at what the opposition are seeing in your team. So they go, they're small, they've got no absolute geniuses there. We should thump them. So let's be really physical. So that's the obvious mindset. Like, let's go and whack them. So what happens if you can't whack them? That's the thing. And that's where I'd go. I'd go down the hit and run where, good luck, boys. 1 minute we're here, next minute we're here. We just move you around. We kick, we run, we kick, we run, we move. We carry low. We're ruthless at the breakdown. So it takes no talent. So it's a bit of TNT with that sort of stuff. It's just effort. And that's one thing that you can actually manufacture a pretty ordinary team into being reasonably good.
That's what we're trying to do, mate.
That's good. All right.
Thanks, Morgan.
Good to talk, Nordo. So, Damien, I've just got one here from Chock again. So I'll just read this out. So Dave's big on culture and changed the perception around the Chiefs into a focus on the Islander influence. What are the obstacles that you think Dave will encounter coming into the Wallabies? Well, there's plenty. Look, the biggest obstacle is probably trying to. Firstly, we have to get the way we want to play the game across to the players. The second thing is we need the players to take some sort of ownership. So rather than lots and lots of documents, we want to do this through imagery. And look, I'll just share with you one example of imagery. So just bear with me here if I can find this. So rather than lots and lots of words, just go to an image. So for instance, something like that. Now, what you put in there, you can get the players to put it in there. So there's pieces of things that resonate to them. So rather than really wordy documents, what you then do is you go, well, hang on, is that what you stand for? So if you've got discipline or whatever, you've got little pieces that at different things resonate to different players. So for instance, if you're from a Polynesian background, that's the first thing you might see there. And then obviously if you're, fifth generation farmer or whatever, that could be a farmer, that could be that guy. Indigenous, it can be there. And there's been lots of these. The boys have been doing lots of these drawings. So, and what it does, it actually engages so that rather than have a really long document, a real wordy document that no one can remember. And I keep thinking of NFL clubs and baseball clubs in America where they show the hallways and there's mantras everywhere. Now, if you're coming to training every day or you go to the same clubhouse once a week to train, there's no chance you're going to remember all of it. No way in the world. But if it's an image where it encapsulates lots of little things of what the club or what the team stands for, it's far more powerful. So I think, look, that's one thing that Dave will drive from a cultural point of view. So hopefully that answers that, Chock.
We've got a question from Lockie in and around. Obviously, you've coached internationally to a lot of teams. Obviously, you coach attack in most of them. So, what international team has been the hardest to exploit They're in attack. Sorry.
Well, yeah, I mean, the obvious one, South Africa, at the World Cup. So they had the best defensive record. It was helter-skelter. So they had a philosophy that just go as hard as you can. If someone misses, someone will cover you. And that was it. So they were hard to break down because there was no real – the systems were hard to break down. I think the other thing is, look, the good part in my development is that I have done a couple of roles as a defensive coach. So you actually you see the other side. And currently with the Crusaders, so it'll be interesting to watch the Crusaders this weekend. Scott Hansen, who is an attack coach, worked with Japan and has worked in Japan. He's now with the Crusaders. He's doing the attack for the Crusaders, but he was doing defence with Japan. So I think it's a good thing for your development because then you get to see what works and what doesn't work. The other thing is from a questioning point of view, so the art of questioning and the art of drawing out information from players, is that when you run an opposed session, rather than look at the attack, so if I'm coaching attack, I don't look at the attack and go, righto, boys, what felt good? Because I don't care. I want to know what feels uncomfortable for the defenders. So the first question I'll ask is, boys, was that hard to defend or not? So find out off the defenders what makes them uncomfortable, what makes them comfortable. And if it makes them comfortable, then chances are you've got a rubbish starter play.
That's good. Ralphie, mate, you want to ask your question? Or not? So I think Ralphie's asked, what do you look to coach post line break?
Well, obviously you got to get support to the player. So we want to get support through the line, and that's one thing that we measure really hard on measuring that. Now, if there's a tackle, obviously those guys through the line, they either receive the ball or they don't. If they don't, and there's a breakdown, the one thing that we want to do is play flat and fast. So you don't let the defence recover. So flat and fast, get stuck into them. And anyone who's been watching any of the league, the two teams that are doing that really well are the Raiders and the Roosters. Probably the third one in the league would be Melbourne Storm. So the try that Cameron Smith set up last week, where he looked like he was going to grub her, and then hit the second player on the pod, and they scored. That set of six was a masterclass in flat and fast. You don't let the defence recover.
It's interesting you talk about Lee, because my question now is going to go back to that. Obviously, we talked about it before with you playing for Parramatta. Is there any of your experience as a rugby league player? Did you bring any of that into your coaching space as a rugby coach?
I think you do, but by the time I got into coaching, I played rugby for a fair while, so you become sort of rugby centric. I do talk to a lot of rugby league coaches, but just about what they're seeing and how they're doing it. So, say for instance, the one thing that I think league will go towards, and I'll share my screen here again, just bear with me, is they'll go to everyone plays shapes very similar, right? This one here is a shape that I believe is a really good one to dent the line. So your traditional out the back of this pod. So it goes to 10. Now the traditional one is there's two runners and you hit that middle guy. Now if you've got a 10 who can pass, hit this guy here because there's the seam, and that's. Now he goes through, but let's presume he doesn't go through. If he doesn't go through, then you've cut the line and you go the same way. So then it just becomes numbers. And then you look at the support. So the support lines. So what are good support lines? The simple answer for me is if you can see the player's number on his back, that's a good support line. So rather than get technical and go angles and look, it's a 45 and mate, like try telling an 13-year-old kid who's been at school all day, mate, 45 is the right angle. And he'd be going, mate, I've had Pythagoras all day. You can shove that where the sun doesn't shine. So as opposed to, if you can see the number, you're in a good position. Done.
Yeah.
Keep it simple.
Scribs has got a few to go in there. So
yeah, I've got one here. Do you think you will need to do a lot more work on tactical kicking awareness back with the Wallabies? Yes, Scrib, yes. Also for England, was a lot of work practice with the whole team or reliant on the vision of specific? Okay, so we did. So not to be a cop out here, Scrib, but firstly, tactical kicking awareness for the Wallabies, yes, we do. Like that's a lay down was there. Did we do whole team? Yes, we did. Did whole team. There was reliance on kick on chase. So from a structured point of view, we did whole team. But then there was the vision side of things where it was relying on Ford Farrell or our edge players like Jack Noel, Johnny May, who learnt to kick left-footed just to be able to grub it through, Elliot Daly. When those guys kicked, that was more reactionary. So, to use, say, looking at the Raiders, if all of a sudden Williams chooses to kick on the fourth because, he sees space in the backfield because the fullback's up, it's exactly the same scenario. And it's just about everyone else reacting. However, the thing is, most of the time with Ford and Farrell, it was the outside guys calling it. They were the ones who were seeing the space in the backfield. And they were calling it. And then it just depended on what sort of kick they could get away. Sometimes it was a crossfield kick. Sometimes it was a grubber through. Sometimes it was like a half-pied bomb. And there was just a kick type. So we practiced as a whole on setup plays. And then during phase play, it was up to Ford Farrell generally to execute. But it was more so the outside backs were the ones that called it.
Rolfie's got another question. Can you hear me? You want to go away, Rolfie? He's got it in the chat, but I think that's directly to me. So looking at block lines, do you look at taking the inside shoulder as a decoy runner, especially as our laws are different to rugby league?
Yeah, look, the one thing with block lines is I like them tight. So run them tight. So for instance, and I'll just share with you again, I just clipped this the other day, is it's non-negotiable so that if it's tight, what it forces the opposition to do is become like a piano accordion. So you run tight and means the defence stays tight. And then the back runner always starts hip to hip. So if this, hang on, I'll just try and find my fingers here so I can actually see myself. Okay, so this guy here is the lead, okay, and this is the back runner. I want the back runner's outside hip connected to the lead's inside hip. And then they're always connected. And then once he has the ball, the lead, he can take off. It just, that's the way that I coach it. So for instance, sorry, I'm on rugby union here. I'll go to league now. Just bear with me. Here we go, NRL. And now I'll go, here we go. So this is run brilliantly here. So you see Travojevic. Beautiful. So look where he starts. Hip to hip. Now, narrow. Now, look, that's more than a block because you've got Cherry Evans who goes out to draw a defender. But that's generally how I like my block lines run. Because look what you do to the defence. So they're in a good position there to defend. They should be able to defend. Now you've sort of held on the inside and you've got everyone defending one-on-one. So now with Travojevic going in there, so going into that hole, what I would expect is these guys here to chase through. So they don't practice chasing through because there's no consequence if there's a tackle. It's a tackle. That's all there is. But from a rugby point of view, to go back to a line break support, you like from a review point of view, you're going, why didn't you chase through? Because if 10 gets free, gets him, then it's the offload and away we go. Is that okay?
I think so. Is there
here it
a
is.
bit of difference in that defensive stuff though, Scotty? Like, league tends to push in ways, right? Defensively, they like to jam in a lot. Well, rugby tends to be a little bit more up and out. So, what are you looking for in a decoy when the defence is sort of popping out instead of jamming in?
I still want the same thing, because you can always hit that lead. So you hit that lead runner once, and all of a sudden they start to, because everyone coaches spacing. So what you want to do is to take away from the defence. You want to take away their spacing. So you want to make it so that all of a sudden, they're in a situation where they're quite narrow, and then it opens up different spaces. That's it. If they want to stay wide, they want to stay in their spacing, hit the lead.
Yep.
Yeah.
I might. What have we got here? Got a question. Have you got any? Is there any options for A games for Australia in the coming 2 seasons? So any of those?
Oh, look, hopefully, it'd be great if there was. It's for a couple of reasons. Firstly, we need as many games as we can get. Secondly, it means that guys who are on the cusp, and if I think from a Brumbies point of view, you look at guys like Tommy Wright. Banksy's done enough to be in that pony list, and so is Wright, really. But you look at some of the young guys coming through, like Rayshawn. A good opportunity to throw those guys in. So definitely love to have A games. Anyone got a millionaire mate that we can?
I think that was.
Take some money off them.
It was thrown up not long ago. Obviously, with COVID, things changed a little bit around the preparation for our Wallabies. It was thrown up that a possible sort of possibles, probables option.
Yeah. We've spoken about it. We've definitely spoken about it. Look, the other exciting thing at this period of time is that we've got Australians playing against Australians again. There's 5 teams playing super. Look, it's going to be good. I'm really excited about it. It's actually been a blessing in disguise. Because no one cares about the Jaguares and the Sunwolves and South Africa. And when I say no one cares, I'm talking about the general punter. But they do care. Like, if you live in Canberra, you care about the Brumbies. If you live in New South Wales, you care about the Waratahs. If they're winning, I suppose.
Yeah, exactly.
Exactly. So I'll put that in. But they do. Hopefully we get more of a connection, and it feels more so like going back to club, the grassroots movement, which has happened in Canberra. It's happened in Sydney. You look at the Manly Warringah games, and it's happened in Brisbane, where people have gravitated back towards the club footy. So I think it's exciting. It's good. And hopefully we do get A games.
Another little question off the scrum. So left-hand side scrum with an 8 and 9 pick. Yep. Which defender are you wanting your 9 to go at?
I want him to go on an arc, and I want him to target the outside shoulder of 9. So you turn into a speed race there. Let's see what he's got. Let's see what juice the 9's got to start with. Pressure the 9, so that if the 10 all of a sudden feels that he hasn't got him for speed, the 10 will sit down. If the 9 does have him for speed, then he can just, it all becomes equal numbers then. So away you go. So you get that extra player.
Yeah, nice.
Yeah. Conversely, if you've got the world's slowest 9.
It's like Lockie Crichton. He's on here. Lockie Crichton's probably the world's slowest 9 in Canberra.
Yeah. So if you've got the world's slowest 9, why not put your winger there? So Japan did it. They put... not Matsushima, they put Kenki Fukuoka there. So why not? Think a little bit differently. Now, what you have to do, it means you might have to train the guy to roll a ball into a scrum.
It's difficult for some.
Yeah, very difficult.
Yeah.
But why not? That would scare the absolute bejesus out of me if I was the opposition 9, because I go, now I've got the state champion 100-metre runner who's now got the ball in his hands from an 8-9, and I'm expected to make the tackle because the system is 10 takes 10 and 12 takes 12 and yada, yada, yada.
I might go back to a sort of little statement you made in and around the 12 being a big, strong ball runner, and obviously Australia, necessarily outside of Karevi, who's not really, whether he's around or not, is there anyone outside of in Australia at the moment that we've got big ball carriers at 12?
No, so Damo, I said A centre. So
A centre, sorry.
Yeah, I didn't say
sorry.
12. So yeah,
Thank
A
you.
centre. Yeah, no worries. So look, you guys got a beauty down there in Simone. You know, Iro's quality because he's a good kicker. He's got good subtle passing skills, and he's a big bopper. He's 103 kilos. So he's an option. But then you've also got guys like Matt Tamur who can play 10, 12. You've got James O'Connor play 10, 12. And it just means then that it's the balance of then who's your 13. So then your 13 has to be someone who can get you over the game line. So whether that's Patea, Hunter, you know, whether it's Tavita, you know, they're all pretty handy.
Do you think, obviously you said earlier in regards to Australians playing Australians, do you think it's going to be an element that's going to lift the Wallabies' attitude as players, seeing they're playing against each other all the time?
Yep, 100%. So we've spoken to a lot of the players in the pony list. So for anyone who doesn't know what the pony list is, it's players of national interest. And we've got about 34, 35 players on that list. Now, as well as those players, I've also spoken to other guys who are on the periphery. So all of a sudden you're having a chat and going, look, I'm really looking forward to watching you guys play. So I think, you know, it's great because you're going like against like. It's apples against apples. It's perfect.
Great. Look, I'm starting to run out of questions. I'm hoping some other ones have got any out there. Coombsy, you got anything for us, mate? No, he doesn't.
That's all right.
Look, I might even go back to the fact that, you know, obviously 5 different spaces you've coached in, and in a sense, there's a lot of different cultures too. You've got France, Japan, England, and obviously Australia. Like, there's a lot of different cultures. Any of them similar in what they do rugby-wise as a coach when you go into those programs? Is there much similarities, or is it just completely different in every program you go into?
They all like playing footy.
Yep.
Yeah. Everyone loves playing. And they all want to be picked. So in order to get your point across, probably selection's your biggest tool. That's one thing. And then the subtleties around culture and all the rest of it, you have to work that out. But the other common theme, I think, is that you've got to coach the person first before you coach the player. So you're going to have to go out and then find out what makes that person tick. And it's hard work. You know, there's going to be some people along your journey that you don't particularly gravitate towards. However, you've got to find some common theme. Now, saying rugby is your common theme, well, that's obvious. You know, everyone, we're here because we love playing the game. But then you just got to find another common thread. You know, it can be something innocuous that maybe you're not into, but then all of a sudden the other bloke he's really passionate about. So you might have to read up on it. You might have to do some research. And then once you find a bit of common ground, you can coach the player. I firmly believe that, and Eddie's really big on that, on that relationships side of thing. He wasn't a long time ago, but he now he's going down the route where, okay, it's a different generation. There's some things that are exactly the same. They love playing games and all that type of thing, but it's just how you actually communicate. I think that's a really big learning for me.
Yeah, cool. Nordo, you've got another question, mate.
Yeah, Wise, I just wanted to clarify something you said earlier around the detail around your running line. So you spoke about targeting shoulders depending on where you're going next, and you spoke about if you're running a hit back play, potentially targeting inside shoulder of the 10. And I'm just sort of wanted to clarify. So, like, I suppose from my perspective as a former 10 or 15, if I was heading back to the short side, I'd probably, the more space I had, the better. So, like, I'd rather that play be a fraction wider. Do you look at it in terms of minimising numbers in that space or actually maximising the space?
I do understand what you're saying. So for instance, if it's a 21 play, so two one way to come back.
Mm.
That's ideal for inside shoulder 10 because he gets spat out to the open. And then what you do is then that next play, you just go straight at the 10, right? You know that he's dead, right? He's buried. And then you can come back. Now, for an 11 play, look, that's where it can get a bit tricky, mate, because if it's too narrow, then you can't really come back. So that's where you can go in between the 10 and 12. And it means that if your clean's really effective there, what you do is on your inside gate clean, you just clean up the 10. Just get rid of him. Bury him. And that's on an 11 play. So that's 1-1 for anyone. I'm just talking jargon. Does that explain it, Nordo?
Yeah, it does, mate, a little bit, yeah. No, I was just interested in, obviously I never played league, but I watch a lot of it in terms of, how they separate the field and counting numbers. I've always personally found it very difficult to get to a point in the field and be able to count numbers in that fashion. I was wondering if by going inside shoulder, you're actually trying to eliminate a number on the short side that way.
Yeah, and look, that's just the subtlety to it. So if it's 21, you can overload. Look, I to be honest, I don't follow the league principles in that. It's rugby, and it's just about a matter of how can we have numbers on one of those short sides on a return play without them actually seeing the numbers. So if it's a 21, you overload that first breakdown, they all of a sudden pop up. The other guys are in the system, and then they can't count the numbers. They just it's tough. So that's it. It's not anything to do with zones. You don't have to be so prescriptive to be on the 20. It's just enough space to play. So, for instance, what we always say on a 21 is we don't want to go past the inside upright. That's it.
On the strike play.
Yeah. No. If it's a 21, so on that second phase, I don't want to be any wider than that. The near upright. Yeah, because I want to corral people on the other side, and that's it. So it's certainly not as prescriptive as league.
Yeah, thanks, mate.
Yeah. Sweet, mate.
Angus, Max, you got a question?
Thanks, Damo. Scott, just on how do you coach in your attack, your risk versus reward? So in terms of, whether there's a 5-minute scrum off your own line, if there's an opportunity to run it with the players. So about 4 weeks ago, we heard from Laurie Fisher, and he was talking about he's a little bit more conservative in, seeing what you can get. Whereas also from McKellar in the last 2 years, I've heard him encouraging, the offload or the attacking play if the intent's right, even if the execution's not right. So do you try and get players just play what's in front of them? Or do you have some set rules about, look, we don't do this, even if it might be a 50-50?
I think as long as you practice it, it's not risky. So if you're going to run from your 5 metre, then practice it. It's that simple. If you practice it and there's a skill error, then I'll wear that. That's my job. That's where it falls on me. So I think you have to find out the ambition of your players. And then if you're coaching in a coaching team, then, you have to find out where the other coaches are at. So I'll give you a real example. When I was at Montpellier in France, Jake White was a head coach. So, mate, until you got to about the 50, you can't play. It was kick, right? However, I'm probably more radical. I want to have a go. I want to have a crack. So we end up coming to a happy compromise where you had these run or kick plays. So I was like, right, well, listen, I'll take my piece of the pie. I'll move it to an edge, but on the edge, I'll have someone who can kick on the run. And that was it. But we practiced it. I think that's the biggest thing. And then you say play what's in front of you. I hate that term. I really do. I'm sorry, but because everyone uses it, play what's in front of you. You have to arm players with what do you see? Like what do you see? But what are the actions? So what are we trying to do? So if you see space on an edge and you go, there's only 3, and it's play what's in front of you, you go, okay, well, how do I sit those 3 down? So I think the principle's right with play what's in front of you, but I just don't think we coach the how enough. Where you go, okay, look, there's 3 of them there. We're going to play what's in front of us. We're going to go to an edge, but I'm not sure how I get there on a 5-minute scrum. So if it's on the left-hand side, okay, you might go 8, 9, big bopper, short, out the back, and then cut pass. Whereas on a right-hand side, depending on how big your blind is, 5 metres out, you get the blind winger to go, the short side winger, your right side winger, he goes so there can be an 8, 9 if they leave their winger up. And if they don't leave their winger up, well, then you just go if the 9's covering it, because it becomes 2-on-1. And as soon as the winger comes forward, okay, you leave him there. Then all of a sudden you can go 9 to 10, miss pass, because you've sat them all down. So I think you have to arm them with, I think you have to arm them with little tools of how to manipulate the defence. Does that answer it?
Yeah, cheers, that does. I suppose just a follow-on from there, with yourself and Dave and the coaching group, what's the attacking philosophy of the Wallabies we're going to see this year?
Yeah, that's a good question.
He's got him before me.
Yeah, exactly. No, look, we're mucking around with a few models at the moment, and it's interesting you talk about what the philosophy is. There definitely has to be the balance between run and kick, because the system that was taken to the World Cup, and this is not bag anyone, but it just by not kicking, it means that they load the front field, and it's just so hard to break down. You have to kick to break up that front field, so that they've got to cover the backfield. That's the first one. The second one is the system that we'll play. We're still debating that at the moment. And the provincial coaches, the attack coaches, are having a bit of input there. So I've asked Huey for his opinions on it, as I have with the other attack coaches. Pretty set on a system at the moment. But I just got to work out the detail of how we're going to implement it. So who goes where, ball carriers in what position, and what skill sets we've got. So I'm probably in the same situation as Nordo at the moment.
Good. Cheers.
We've touched a lot on the different spaces you've coached in, Scotty. You've coached as an assistant with a lot of head coaches.
Yep.
Who'd be the toughest one to work with? To get your point across. Obviously, you're very open to attacking and having a crack, but someone like Jake White probably isn't as open.
Yeah, look, that's probably the most. When you go philosophically, we'd be the furthest apart. Yeah, definitely. Right, Jake and I. The toughest to work for.
Well, not so much work for, but obviously work with and get it all right.
No, it'll be Jake. Jake by a long way. Very, very. This is the way. But probably, and then to answer the same question in a different way, the hardest one to work for, as far as just driving you and drilling you to get better, is no brainer, is Eddie.
Yeah.
Only because he wants the best, and I know that Scriv, who's on the call, he's sort of worked under that system. Marco's seen it, so he's the hardest, but in a good way, in that he wants the best for the team, and he wants the best. He wants to get the best out of you as a coach. So I think that's the big thing. And whilst he might give you a spray and shorten you up every now and then, he's got an unbelievable talent for letting go. So once it's done, and then you move on to the next thing.
Yeah, there's been I've listened to a lot of podcasts of late regarding sort of Eddie and people interviewing players about Eddie, and that's some of the things they do talk about. He can be quite ruthless on you, but the next day he'll release it. Like it may be ruthless, but the next day that's been forgotten. It's time to move on.
Yep. Yeah, and that's a skill. That's a great skill for a coach. That's a really good skill to have.
Would you envision seeing him back here at any point? Obviously, we're pretty set with Dave and you guys to the World Cup, hopefully. So, would you think that's something Eddie would do?
Oh, I hope so. Yeah, I hope so. I think it'd be great so that other coaches, some of the coaches here on this forum, if they've got ambition and they get the opportunity and they could work under him, I reckon it'd be brilliant. He'd be great for Australian rugby in that the mentoring he could provide for coaches and just that experience, that wealth of experience, and what he's coming back from the Northern Hemisphere. He watches everything, and how he could implement some of the strategies. I reckon he'd be really good.
And on that, like, how do you see Dave? How's obviously us Australians like to put them down as Kiwis, and it shouldn't be done, but across the board, Dave's got all the runs on the board, and he looks like a very successful coach. And how do you think he's going to work for our Wallabies moving forward?
I reckon he'd be good in that he's got that ability to get to know the person and then coach the player. Like, he's got that. You can see it when he does press interviews. He's quite personable. He's softly spoken. He can do that. But he's got that evil Kiwi about him. Let's make no bones about it. Kiwis are violent. When they play rugby, they're violent. And if you need to be convinced of it, when you start beating a Kiwi team, just watch how they react. Just watch those breakdowns. Just watch them go. He really instills that in his teams. I've watched Glasgow. Before I took the job, I watched a stack of Glasgow games, and they've got that edge. They've got the breakdown. They are ruthless. So I think he'll definitely bring that, which is good. You get that hard edge, but there's a lot of detail around how he coaches it. Probably very similar to Laurie.
And obviously for you, you'd probably have a number of things that you want to be working on with the Wallabies. But to go back on something you said earlier that Eddie said to you, what's the number one thing that you think is the most important that we've got to look at moving forward for our Wallabies?
Strategy. Understand why you're doing things and how you do them. And then with that comes in Scriv's question around the kick strategy. They're all intertwined, but the strategic side of things. And then I think the thing that underpins that is then selection. So, selecting the right blokes who want to get out there and have a crack and the correct mix. I think that's it. It's definitely strategy.
It's looking at, there's no brainer. Like, it's very young. All our franchises have a lot of very young footballers. So, I don't know. Is it exciting? Is it
Very
daunting?
Exciting. No. You know what? The thing about anyone who, say, club rugby, senior rugby, the thing is, there's three stages of player. There's the young kid when they first come in and they go, Coach, you've got to pick me. Give me a go. Like, I'm better than that guy. Then there's those settled guys, the guys that, they've played first grade or whatever you're coaching. Say you're coaching C grade in Queanbeyan or wherever. They've played there for a long period of time. They've, from early 20s to late 20s, they've played and they've been good clubmen. And they don't say anything. They just go, I just love the club and I want to play. And then you get the last one, which is those guys that are towards the end. And some of them are really good buggers. Like, they're really good in that they can drive your club. But some of them aren't, because they're all about self-protection. And they're the ones that go, Coach, you can't pick that young kid because he's got no experience. But if they wind the clock back 15 years, they're the one going, Coach, you've got to pick me because I'm better than him. So you've got to be – it's that balancing act. So if I look at that model, from a Wallaby point of view, we've probably got the first two. We haven't got many in that last group at all.
Yeah, I suppose for the punter, that's probably daunting for some that don't have a full understanding of what it looks like. But for others, that's pretty exciting to think that we've got such a young, talented group of kids coming through, and it's pretty exciting for me anyway. So you get the luxury to fix them up.
I don't know whether it's a luxury, but it's it's good fun. It's good fun, Damo.
We'll start wrapping it up, I think. But I'd like to finish with the one question that I've asked all our coaches right at the end, just to finish it all up. But look, if you had all the money in the world, who would you want to sign?
Yeah, okay. So I think the coaches have said Rory Arnold. So, look, in this current climate, mate, he'd be very handy. But I think from a strategic point of view, the one guy I'd love to get over here would be Owen Farrell. Just a fierce competitor, fierce competitor. Anyone who's watching that documentary, The Last Dance, there's some similarities. Hates losing. Yeah, hates losing. And look, he's still developing his game, but strategically, quite clever, and just drives standards. So he'd be the one from a union point of view. And then from a league point of view, I'd probably go, Luke Keary had a background in union, played union all his school life. So he'd be handy, but man, Victor Radley, he's an absolute madman. So imagine him at back row wiping people out.
What about Bradman Best? What's your thoughts on Bradman Best in Newcastle?
Well, he's got the best name in the league, hasn't he?
Doesn't he?
So, yeah. So that's the starting point. But he goes all right too. But look, you know what? I wouldn't look too hard at league, because I think some of those young blokes that we've got, they'll do a really good job for us. They'll be right.
Yeah, good. Well, that's good.
Yeah.
Well, that's great, Scott. I must say this has been great. I was expecting it. I think a few of the messages I get privately is that they love the passion that our coaches have been showing on this, and I think you've shown it for us as well. I think we're in good stead moving forward. We've got passionate coaches looking after our Wallabies, and I know we've got passionate coaches in our franchise space as well. So, again, thank you very much for your time, and I'm sure everyone here can appreciate everything. So, again, thanks for your time.
No, pleasure, Damo. Look, it's an honour to actually talk to the coaches. If there's anything you want clarified or any follow-up, just email Damo, and then I'll get onto it. So,
right, man. I need more emails. Thanks, Scotty.
Yeah, that's right. Great. That's right. Just flood his inbox. But listen, thanks very much. Thanks for the opportunity.
Pleasure. Thank you. And obviously to finish, guys, we've got one more in a couple of weeks, which will be Steve Babick. Steve's obviously been mentioned a lot from our head coaches here in regards to his influence on the tackle zone. So he'll do something in a couple of weeks. So I'll obviously email you guys out that. And then from there, we're probably looking to have a bit of a break, but this is something we're going to continue on. But obviously the footy season starts for our boys here on the 4th of July, and club footy starts again on the 18th of July. So I understand all you guys are getting busy, but one more to go in a couple of weeks, and then we'll have a break, but then we'll look to continue it on with some of our coaches coming back and talking. So, again, thanks, Scotty, for your time. Really looking forward to what the Wallabies are going to give us at the back end of the year. So, again, thank you very much.
Thanks. Thanks, everyone. Bye.